All right, so let's talk about healthcare because with raising animals, you have got to maintain their health and watch out and keep them healthy because it is a business. And if you don't know how to take care of your animals and they can't survive, then you're not going to make any money. So it requires regular care, um, vaccinating for different diseases, deworming. Okay, animals like we raise goats. That's the number one issue with goats is they get worms when they eat. Castration. So that's going to be, removing the testicles so they don't breed. You don't want, inbreeding or breeding when you're not wanting it to. So it's very necessary. And grooming, even though they're livestock animals, I'm not saying you got to wash them every day, but they do have hooves that need to be trimmed. They do have, like if it's a sheep, it needs to have its wool shorn twice a year usually. So there's some things that you've got to keep up with these animals. You need to know also kind of what to look for so that you know if your animal is sick. Um, you need to know what's not normal. So we call these vital signs, what we check to see if an animal is not acting right. So some good indicators for live animals not or livestock, large animals not acting correctly, um, but it's probably sick. So normal behavior. So if that animal is usually very docile, very calm, and it's just acting angry or laying down all the time, it's not active, it's usually active, there's something probably wrong. If it's standing weird, has a limp, its posture is looking wrong, um, nasal discharge, runny nose, if it's rubbing on everything, um, fecal consistency, so it has diarrhea, um, or not going to the bathroom, tail, how it's carrying its tail. So if the tail's, you know, for a goat, especially if their tail is down, they're not feeling good. It could just mean they're cold, but typically a healthy goat has its tail up. Overall body condition, weight, if they lost weight, lost muscle, how do they look? Their hair. So if they've got a nice shiny coat, they're pretty healthy. If their hair looks really dull, they're not healthy. Something's wrong. And swelling or lameness. Lameness means, they're not walking around. So if that happens, check the vital signs. That'd be the pulse, respiration, temperature. Um, these, these may just be they're having a bad day, but that's why you need to check your animals every day so you know what to look for. You know that animal. You know if something's different. So deworming. Worms are awful, especially in the lamb and goat world. Cattle need to be dewormed as well, and pigs. However, they typically are a little bit more tough against these. So what happens is worms, they come in the spring whenever it's really wet, and they live in the ground, and they're going to lay their eggs. So a goat is going to go and they're going to eat some grass that's real close to the ground. They're going to ingest some of those worm eggs, the larvae. The worms are going to grow inside of them. And what a worm does is they're a parasite, and they are going to suck all the blood, all the good stuff, all the good nutrition that goat is eating. You could be feeding that goat wonderful food. But if it's full of worms, the worms are getting that. The goat's getting none. And eventually, if nothing happens, that goat's going to die because it's getting no nutrition because the worm's getting it all. Now, there's several wormers that you can use that you can give the animals, and it's called deworming. And you do this at least twice a year. You need to deworm your animals to prevent parasites. Now, vaccinations, they're really essential for livestock. These are developed just like you've been vaccinated to prevent them from diseases that we've already cured or that are preventable. So most farmers, they're going to give we give our own vaccinations. If you have a whole bunch, it's not cost effective to go to the vet every time you need a vaccine. You can buy most vaccines at Tractor Supply, or you could just order them through your local vet office. Chewy, even, they ship vaccinations. Valley Vet Supply are good ways to get them. And a lot of vaccines for like goats and cattle and sheep, they're going to have a combination. So like we order a 9-way, and it prevents for 9 different diseases in one shot. So that's what we like to do. And you're going to do these typically once a year. Now, different ones, like, typically you don't do rabies for livestock animals, but if you did, like dogs, like our guard dogs, we do rabies. Those can be every 3 years. So it does depend on the vaccination. Hoof care, that's the part of the grooming. Most of the times the animals, if they're on hard terrain, the environment's going to beat down their hoof and they're not going to need as much. But if they're in just a wet climate, they're going to need a lot more care. Diseases can get in there, then get foot rot, and that's not going to make them walk, not going to make them eat. So it can get very bad. And you can just go in with some shears and you can do it yourself. We do it ourselves. Or if you don't want to, there's people that they do that for a living. Shearing, sheep and goats, if you're raising them for fiber, so that's for their hair, you need to give them a haircut at least once a year. That's removing all of the fleece. Typically you do this in the summertime so that they're not super hot. So it says there was an Australian sheep called Shrek, and y'all should Google this. Shrek escaped the shears for several years and was finally found with around 60 pounds of wool after 6 years without shearing. So that poor Shrek was loaded. I actually went and found Shrek. So here is Shrek the lamb. That is a ton of wool. Poor thing was just carrying that around. Can you imagine how heavy that would be? All right, so let's go back to the lesson. Okay, castration. This is another thing that's necessary. Male animals, if you're just raising them like a steer, that's what you want to eat is steers for consumption, not for breeding. You're going to neuter them, or we call them castrating it in the livestock world. So you remove the testicles. There's a couple ways to do this. You can do this surgically with a scalpel, so you can cut them out. That's a blood method. Or what we do is we use bands. So that's what this bottom one is. Castration can be accomplished with lastrator bands. They're little bands. They look like little ponytail holders. They're tiny. And you take... I'm blanking. You take the bander and you put the band on it. And you're going to make sure the band goes around both testicles. You squeeze it and the band is on there, and eventually the band is going to cut off the blood supply and it's going to deaden that testicle, and testicle will eventually fall off. Then there's the Burdizzo method. Use a stainless steel clamp like pliers. You crush the testicle cords and you don't break the skin. So you kill those cords. It's a little bit faster than banding. And then eventually the testicle is going to dry up and fall off. So bloodless, they reduce the risk of flies and irritation. It's just easier. We do the bands and you can do them. And in about 2-3 weeks, the testicles will fall off and we don't have hardly any problems. Pigs are difficult because testicles are inside the body. So usually they just slaughter male pigs before they reach sexual maturity. But you can surgically castrate them. And it's pretty simple. I've done it, actually. You just take the scalpel and you slice through each testicle and you squeeze it and pop it out. Just like that. It's easier to do it the younger they are. All right, so here's just some livestock terminology, some basic things you need to know. Hopefully you know a lot of these terms, but if not, I really encourage you to learn them. I know they will be on your test. So a female cattle that has calved or had a calf is a cow. A heifer is one that hasn't had a calf. Castrated male is a steer. Intact male, so it still has its testicles for breeding, is a bull. Young cattle are calves until they're weaned. Weaned means they are taken off the mother's milk, usually at 5 months. Female sheep are ewes. Male sheep that are intact are rams, and castrated are wethers. So you call them lambs until they're a year old. And then you call them mutton after that. I don't think that's on here. Female goats are does or nannies. Intact males are rams or bucks. Castrated male goats are wethers as well. Young goats are called kits. Female pigs are sows. That is not sows. Male pigs are boars. It's not on here, but a castrated male is a barrow. A young female pig is a gilt. So that's like a heifer. Hasn't had babies yet. And young pigs are piglets.